Okay, and with that cough, we're off.
You're a poet, and we're not aware of the fact.
Shall I just roll through these topics one at a time, and you can sit there and sort of sniffle, cough, and moan, or something, or what?
Yeah, why not? But
Unrelated.
apologies in advance if I'm not as quick or as charming as I usually am.
That's all right. You're not as pretty either. Ignition is actually optional and sometimes required in ramjets and scramjets. Just
This
want
was
to.
a conversation yesterday, which was, yeah,
It was not helpful to the situation, but I felt like it was important that the the model of how scramjets work was defended.
we did pull ourselves out of that pretty quickly, that rabbit hole, in because neither of us know actually, and neither of us have built a scramjet. So the analogy started to talking to engineering of scramjets. But I get your point. It's like, what is the ignition point?
Yeah, yeah, and so like even for, at risk of opening an old wound, for a scramjet, the component might be something like the fuel injector or something. There'll be some little tiny component that without that one bit, the whole
Yeah,
thing's
yeah. It's a bit like when you've got one of these long domino lines. It's like the first one, and then it
okay.
all
So
builds.
we've been talking about reasoning, and I actually think we've been talking about conceptual data modeling. And I think what we're doing
We,
isn't new, but what we're doing it with and why.
yeah, I've got a few things to say about that, but let's you go first because
I
you
think
probably are
it's
more
important
sensible.
that no matter what we do, we always draw on predefined bodies of knowledge like entity relationship diagrams, like conceptual data modeling, because when the LLM knows or can relate to something it knows a lot about, then you get the best results.
Yeah, so I agree. And up to this point, where I've been going through, remember, we started actually with ERD. And
Mm.
then from the ERD, I was thinking,
Yeah,
actually,
that largely kicked off the reasoning path,
yeah. And then you can get a lot drawn. And then I went into UML v3.
which I think
Um,
is a dead end personally.
yeah, well, it's a self consistent set of objects with good definitions about what those objects are.
But look,
But
what I'm trying to point at is that the core. I don't know enough like words that sound like core, fundamental, most basic, axiomatic. If you reduce knowledge down to its smallest components, you end up with something like entities, relationships,
right now,
and
here's my
attributes.
yeah. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this one, so apologies for talking over you there. But so I started off with ERDs and then moved to UML, and I agree UML is well,
I don't
it's
really care.
it's
Yeah,
fine.
like
But then moving on,
moving
but
on.
sorry, have you give me sorry, man. I'm let's say I'm going to really irritate you today. I think I apologize in
It's
advance.
no worries, mate. It's not
Um,
just today.
oh, okay, cool. Uh, the when one of the things I've been thinking about is remember yesterday I was talking about defining the what it is to be a domain
Yeah,
definition
right.
without saying what those domain definition names are. You can allow each domain, say if it, instead of using the word entity and us saying
Oh
from
yeah.
higher,
No, you're right there.
moving
You're
to
right because different domains seem to require a slightly different type of thinking. Like it's almost like each domain. It's not an. There's no standard format for all domains. There is just a
right.
kind of a loose one, and so there's two things I'd like to declare. Number one is the example where the ASCII diagram of the user interface,
Uh-huh.
like that's not an entity or anything, but that's an
Right.
extremely useful way to reason about that domain, right?
Exactly.
But
And
the second the
sorry, go.
the second part is that if you enter a new domain and you start talking about it in a sloppy way with a transcript and a discussion, what I believe happens is that the LLM naturally falls into a mode or a pattern that best fits that domain. And there's something to be said about to do reasoning or any work with LLMs where you expect the LLM to be a useful contributor, to allow it to fall where it naturally wants to go is
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
very
That's
powerful.
exactly.
It's a
Yeah,
it's like if you relax what you want from it, it will be
yeah.
much more useful.
I totally agree, and I'm getting good results by um, defining uh, what it is to be a domain, and it
Yeah,
doesn't enforce any
that's
structure.
good. That's good. That's good. That's good.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Um.
in generating a conjugation between two domains, then it needs to agree and mix and match and maybe split. You know, you got one thing here which is your ASCII diagram, and that ASCII diagram actually talks about a similar thing in another domain that they've defined in a completely different way, but it's still internally coherent. So the high level rules of producing a conjugation is all we're needing to do is you've done your homework, and I don't care what you call it, but you can't have any contradictions in there. You can't say black is white.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so the rules of a domain are non-contradictory. Like
Right.
it's like one level above conceptual data modeling. Like it's conceptual, it's like the heart of knowledge. And I'm sure there's a word for that or a study for that or whatever. But if you can remove everything possible and just what is the purest form of knowledge, it's like consistent, covers all areas, defines where it stops. Like there's all these kinds of
Yeah, and there's ways
deep
to test
rules.
that. And the kind of the highest meta thing I've found, and I'm going way back to my undergrad, and I really should do a bit more catching up on it. Is kind of it's called lemon logic, but it's based on Greek, and it's basically there are assertions. This is true, and here are the relationships between these assertions, and therefore you can make implications from it. That's all you really need. You don't need to call them entities. You don't need to call them
Nah,
sorry,
nah, and
values.
you almost need to like avoid calling them anything because you want the LLM to naturally just do it because the
Yeah,
LLM
because
is a logic machine. It does,
yeah, it loves it. It
yeah.
eats it. Like
It's like its
popcorn.
native language. It's its
Yeah,
native language, and if you call it something, it's no longer vector native or something
yeah,
like that, right? That's really what we're talking about, I think, is
yeah. And you
what is
can
the purest way to communicate with an LLM.
right. And say if a domain is written entirely in abstract notation, another LM is sorry, another domain is written entirely in NL, and they both want to talk to each other. Then the conjugation makes sure that both understand each other, and then you talk to the conjugation,
Right.
and you get really good results.
I think there's a principle to be declared here whereby if all you had was English and you were speaking to a machine of pure logic, how would you go about communicating with it? And I think in that sense, we need to treat the LLMs as alien intelligences where they have a way of thinking that we know is extraordinarily pure, ultimately broad, but we don't know how it works inside, and so we need to treat them like an alien. The LLM is trying really hard to talk to us in our language. We need to make an effort to talk in its language and to discover its language.
That's interesting because I've got half a blog post set of notes arguing that artificial intelligence is the wrong term. Alien intelligence is the right term. Um, and the reasoning behind it is
Yeah, it is alien. It is alien.
what you said. We don't know, but
Yeah,
what we can. It's a little bit like. Oh no, analogy. I'm not going into
don't need it.
analogies.
Yeah, we get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I think your reasoning is exactly where we've been going down. But the conjugation between two internally just nonsense, right?
Say that again. You
So,
broke up while you were talking there.
sorry. So long as each domain is not internally complete nonsense, so long as it makes sense,
Yep.
then the conjugation between that and any other domain is something that an LLM can get its teeth into. So it's like,
Right.
right,
Yeah, right. I want to make sure we understand, though, that that conjugation is not transient. It's not just in time, and it should, to be of value, require some input from a human in terms of a
yeah,
discussion.
probably,
Yeah,
or certainly in a few renders, in saying,
yeah. It needs
okay,
that because it should include new information.
yeah, yeah, the and the I completely forgot what I was about to say. Shit,
Forgetting is a
that's not
blessing,
working.
my friend. Enjoy it. So,
Giving is a blessing. Oh, you're Buddhist now. Oh Jesus, man, I'm not there.
so
What's I gonna?
the
No,
CRM
doesn't matter. Right.
the CRM needs its own domain,
Yep.
and I think that that's an example where an ERD is maybe a good fit. But
Well, the CRM. So yesterday I did some work on taking just a transcript from our friendly, not the trucking. This is just a dry run for my benefit, and in the space of 20 minutes from just one conversation of 58 minutes long, it created the definitions which agreed with the what it is to be a definition, and therefore can talk to another domain. So, because if you're talking to someone who's
hang
not
on,
actually
stop.
nuts,
What's the point? Stop.
the point is, if you're not talking to someone nuts, you can create a CRM straight from, or any other domain, straight from natural language, because people who are
So
not
okay, so
nuts.
the issue you're picking up there is that when I say the CRM is probably a good fit for an ERD, you're like, it doesn't need that. It can just be natural language, and the
Yeah,
LLM will figure out what the domain should be, right?
right, right.
Okay,
Yeah,
but then how? At some point, though, that another layer needs to be formed, which is the implementation of that logic of that domain needs to be applied into a system, and so that system or that domain has rules, business rules. If not, like, are you suggesting then that the execution of those rules can in fact be done without an ERD? Like, we actually don't need an ERD to make sure that the logic is correct, and we can kind of just,
uh,
you know,
that is where I'm going down. I think there's a
oh
general
boy,
rule where you try and avoid um, locking down as late as possible.
locking down late. Yeah,
Um,
okay. Well, I'll tell you where I've come from the implementation side is starting to
mhm,
think that maybe because reasoning burns a lot of tokens and often gets checked by a human.
mhm.
Um, but if you provided just pure reasoning definitions for the system to execute upon and decide how the machine works, I think that's asking for trouble because the freedom that you're trying to introduce during the domain phase can be your enemy during the execution phase. Like, you don't want it being creative or philosophical or innovative while it's
Ah,
executing, right?
that's where
Yeah.
the guardrails come in. I think that's probably what you mean by business business rules, right?
No, it is not.
So,
It is not.
okay.
I have not finished,
So,
please. You were trying to run off and cut me off. I haven't
please
finished.
do. Please do.
The the um the the business rules, to address your comment, I meant that they seem to me to be a form of definition, like they're like an assertion about, you know,
Yes.
Hamilton
Um,
East gets done on a Monday. That's sort of
yeah.
a,
Yes. Yeah.
you know,
Amanda from accounts can only look at accounts. Would
yeah,
be.
yeah. Um, but so where I've been, and I'd been thinking of using Markdown files, um, but now I'm starting to think that maybe it's better to use JSON and JSON schema, where the reasoning domain is used to generate the schema and run like a bunch of arduous like back checks and all kinds of parallel AI calls to make sure it's correct, and it has the same logical qualities that the reasoning domain does. But
Mhm.
then when it goes to be executed, yes, you're still generating the JSON with an AI and it's still thinking about it using the reasoning rules, but the schema constrains it. And so if it wants to change the schema while it's running, it has to go through a much more token intensive process than just writing a new line in a markdown file.
Okay. Pause.
It's the first pause of the day. I can tell now you are finally getting into it.
Bring tokens. Um, yes, because although when at the start you're trying to define what you mean inside your domain, that can be scrappy and so on, and go through a few loops. When you actually use it, you don't want it to be
You don't want it changing.
this. You don't want it to be generating a whole new thing. It's like,
Yeah,
where did that pop up from?
yeah, yeah,
And that's a limitation on the mind of the user.
yeah.
Uh, but it's a reasonable thing for it to be relatively static,
Yeah, you want it to be in
with
work mode.
checks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
And so like
it's like
changing
prod, right? It's like prod. So
yeah. And so changing the schema is not out of the realm of the AI, but it is just a more arduous process, and it means that the hallucinations will be near zero.
and changing the schema should invoke whatever evals, whether that is a human or a bunch of evals that run against it, and saying we expect this from that. Um, that's quite a costly thing. You don't want to be doing that for every prompt. That'd be expensive and
Yeah.
also difficult to follow conceptually in your
It's
human
more like
domain.
it's difficult to follow, I think, is
Yeah,
the issue there.
and so it's like you don't want the room to rearrange every time, or you don't want
Yeah,
your
that's right. You don't want it. You want an element of mechanical reliability to be in there, but
yeah
you still want it to be. It's almost like 3D printing versus casting, I guess.
yeah.
You know,
So now the question is, let me frame that. I would argue we can stipulate JSON, but in order to get this interdomain conjugation, we shouldn't stipulate
no, that's
exact JSON.
independent. That's at a layer completely down. There's no formats, no anything in the domain, unless, of course, the modeling in that domain requires it. But for the CRM, that's not required at all. It's just that's part of the implementation domain, which is a derivative of the business
Yeah,
domain for the CRM.
which interestingly enough comes back to our original thinking around adding JSON with a little bit of context in NL as an app is actually a really useful chunk of stuff.
Yeah, I'm starting to like it a lot actually, and I'm failing to see the downsides of it. So yeah,
Well, I'm coming from I don't know, from whichever direction, doesn't matter. I'm coming from it from the logical side and trying to uh, um, keep NL to the last responsible moment.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I was trying to keep NL all the way down, but I think that's wrong. At some point, it needs to become structured so that the hallucinations are completely removed.
Yeah. Because you can always go up one into like staging, and do the what ifs. It's like, and
Right,
that's where this
but
sticks when
that's
they've got a
that's
model.
the yeah, that automated loop where you should be able to come in and say, "Hey, I want it to do this and this," and you should be able to with just O1 be able to grind through modifying the reasoning domain to then generating a new schema to then updating or migrating the existing JSON objects and all that. You should be able to do that without a dev even setting foot in the building, I think.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Because by JSON is just another language like Mandarin or English, as far as the LLM's concerned. Execution time. But if the important point you're saying is it is relatively static. You don't change the JSON lightly.
More importantly, it can be machine checked, so it can be
Hmm.
checked with a piece of NAP code, a function code, which can
Hmm.
reject and give the LLM a chance to fix its error.
And I agree. Can we get a diagram up for this? Because I think we're converging. You're thinking, my thinking is converging.
I don't know
And
how to draw that.
uh, well, uh, the pathway. So, for example, taking a transcript of someone describing their CRM results in a bunch. I'm going to go with definitions for now. A bunch of definitions. Those definitions is generated by LLM based on what the definition of a definition is. But we don't mind, use whatever field names that you want.
Right.
And then when you go to actual production, those field names actually turn into JSON objects, and those are changed very infrequently. Um, but if you want to add in something, you go back up to the definitions and make sure that those remain self-coherent. And then if you want to talk to another domain, you go to a conjugation with another domain, which allows you at the JSON level to actually talk to another domain.
Yeah, I loosely agree with that. I think that's good enough to implement on. Um, a useful example of where this method of construction assists us for the CRM is that
Mm-hmm.
I can go in there with the CRM reasoning domain and go to a separate but related industry, like the scheduled collection and delivery of portaloos around town. And
Right.
I can turn up
Yeah.
and have a chat with someone about, we can sit in front of the existing trucking CRM. I can chat with the portaloo guy and then take that transcript and derive a changed reasoning domain using the existing one as base, which will be like, solid, and then use that to derive a modified version of the CRM that's unique to them. So,
And that modified version that's unique to them is at the JSON level. Is that right?
yeah, it's implemented differently because the reasoning was modified to suit them, and then
Right.
that was derived down. So what that means is that now if I said to the AI, hey, what's the difference between the trucking, if I'm looking in the App Store and I'm like, what's the difference between the trucking CRM, the Portaloo CRM, and the Beekeeper CRM? And it would,
Mm-hmm.
because it would load all those domains up, it'd be like, well, the difference is blah, 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 blah. And, it'd just talk for days about the
Well,
specifics of each one.
you know what that implies is that it could be an automatic process run by LLMs that look at different domains and suggest for one domain some kind of interesting thing from a completely different domain. So maybe beekeepers have something that they do that
Oh,
the
right. Yeah, so
trucking
you could
firm,
periodically loop through comparing domain with domain and seeing if you can improve one based on what's been learned from another one,
right?
right?
And because we've got the conjugation where the we know that LLMs can talk sensibly between domains and
Mm,
even batches of
right.
domains.
So that's a really good exercise because that's such a large computation. Like if you had 100 different domains, then you need to do 1,000 comparisons, roughly speaking. No, sorry, 10,000. If you had 100 domains, you need 10,000 different comparisons of one with the other. And during each comparison, you might modify each one. So then you got to do the comparisons again. Like it's a really big calculation, that one. That's
Yeah,
definitely a background task.
yeah. There's probably ways to make it more efficient. For example, lumping similar domains into one conjugation and then get that conjugation
Yeah,
to
yeah,
talk
yeah,
to
yeah,
it.
yeah. But
There's
what I'm
ways
trying
to
to
make it
get at is that
easier.
that's a great use of very. It doesn't matter how smart you get, that is still, no matter how smart the AI gets, that is still a slow process because it's a lot of reasoning, no matter what.
Yeah.
It's that whole exponential, you know.
It's also useful though for a new domain. Say if the transcript for a new domain would be, I want to deliver
Oh,
uh,
right. And it can
packages
pull
by
in bits and
drones.
pieces from all these different domains.
Yeah, and you could have
Yeah.
a one line description in the transcript, and then it can look through the domains. Well, other people have done this. They need timing. They need to know
Right.
who's
Yeah.
querying that
Oh,
sort of thing,
that's
and pull
useful.
it all together. And you don't actually have to do the heavy thinking yourself.
That's useful. Okay. All right. So, what I think that means for a running system like the CRM is that if the reasoning is included with the app, it can now talk about itself. It knows, instead of just being prompted, which is an implicit way to get what you want, and then as soon as the user says, "Who are you?" Like, if it's not prompted explicitly to answer that, it'll fall on its face and have stupid answers. But if you've given it
Mm-hmm.
reasoning and taught it about reasoning, so you
Mm-hmm.
give it the reasoning domain, the reasoning domain, and the reasoning for its domain, and then it's like, oh, this is how I work, and this is any aspect you
Right.
want to know about. It can not only answer you intelligently, but it can also say what is outside of its domain because it's like, sorry, that's not in my domain to talk about.
Yeah, but it can also talk about inferences as well, because when you got the definitions, you can say things like, "Is there anything I've missed?" And it'll come up with stuff, especially if it's got other domains to check against. Can I check when we're talking about JSON? We're talking a JSON object is an entity, and inside that JSON is relationships and whatever other information is needed. Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about a
Yeah,
JSON
like a
entity?
like a customer record. Instead of it being a markdown customer record, it would be in JSON.
Yeah, I mean it's trivial enough to go from mark. If you've done the coherency check, it's trivial to go from Markdown to
That's right.
JSON.
That's right. But what's not trivial is to make a schema that constrains how the markdown should be constructed or written, and that's really hard. And so that's where JSON's good because you can make a schema that very tightly says what that JSON object can and can't be.
So tell me more about. At the moment, I've got the definition of what a definition is, um, uh, which allows from a transcript to get a bunch of definitions. Then from those definitions, we get JSON objects, which let's say there's a prototype of here is the format for a customer, and then you've got an actual customer or many customers that use that format. So when you're talking about the automatic checking of the JSON from the other direction, so I'm checking it from the logical direction.
Right.
You're checking it from the syntactical. Is it
Syntactical.
syntax? Yes. Is the syntax and the completeness and the correctness based
Well,
on the JSON?
it's really just the format. That's all.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So here's
Oh,
an
the format. Yeah.
example. Here's an example of the customer record in You still okay, buddy?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yep.
Um, the
Starting to shiver.
do you want to stop?
No. This is too
Okay.
interesting.
Well, dying's not that interesting. Um,
Uh, it's the fire of my my passion for this idea that keeps me warm. Uh, I'm sorry, I'm
you sure it's
paraphrasing.
not the
I'm, I'm,
sure it's
I'm
not the fire
paraphrasing
of
Admiral Nelson.
a, a crippling fever that keeps you warm?
No, I'm interested how crippling fevers usually end up making you feel cold, even though you are uh,
True. So
actually
this
warm.
is this is an example of a customer record in
Yeah,
JSON format,
yeah.
and
Sure.
then
Yeah,
the point is that in order to write that, there would have been a JSON schema which dictated unambiguously what was allowed to go here. And
yeah.
then if the LLM generated a faulty field, the schema would reject it, and so the LLM would receive the error and it would correct itself.
Okay. Talk me through that process. What uh, try and be sorry. Expand that description if you can
Okay,
to each step.
okay. I've developed a hand signal I'm going to try and do for when I'm burning reasoning tokens. If you had a markdown document, you are free to hallucinate within it, right?
Yes,
Like for
hallucinations are not captured. There's no guardrails.
there's no guard, no. And now you could do a second pass that looks at it using LLM logic.
Or do the judging thing that we were talking about 6 months ago, which is
Yeah,
not the right way. Yeah.
but even then, that might still fall off the rails too.
Mm.
And amongst all that, despite all that, you know what fields you want because of the reasoning. And so there is no need for any kind of creative freedom within this format. And so you might as well remove it, remove all the freedom.
So another. I'm going to do the. Sorry, I've taken off hand gestures because I don't like them. I'm going to do the spinny thing. Um, a
Get
way
you
of
some hold
describing
music.
this would be that the definitions as we have now, we know we've gone through a very top level process so that we're confident with the definitions.
Right.
That's a bit like source code. The JSON is the the compiler step. Now
Once
you've
it's compiled,
compiled
yeah.
it.
Yep.
You don't recompile it just on the fly
No, that's right.
because you need it to run.
That's right.
And because it's compiled, then you can get some very lightweight tests
Yep.
inside of there.
Yeah, like
Um,
the compiler will shit itself if you've
yeah,
got something
right,
wrong, right?
exactly. But also, if you try, if you because the JSON, let's say John Doe here, right?
Yep.
You're still the primary interface is still NL.
Yes.
So if I were to say, right, the name is C1234 ID.
That's right. That would depending on how well you defined your schema, that might error.
Right. So there'd be a bunch of rules around a name is an actual real name.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And so
or yeah,
or you
or a zip code. An email address is a better one. It's
yeah, like an email
as
address must have an @ sign.
exactly.
Things
Yeah,
must be a valid domain, all those kinds
yeah,
of things.
yeah. Which would allow. We don't really even need NL to do that checking. The NL interface would allow you to say, right, change the email to WYSIWYG, and you go,
Yeah.
Nah, you can't do that because that's not valid.
Yeah. Now it should have, using its intelligence, it should have rejected you ahead of time. You're really just trying to catch every possible chance that it made a mistake.
Yeah, because the NL, the further the number of steps, the more ludicrous it can do. Uh, I've seen a couple YouTube quite amusing videos where the fastest way to go from Edinburgh to Glasgow is actually via Moscow. I was like, how'd you get there? Um, because of it was a graph database, and it's like they got the weighting slightly wrong, and so actually the fastest way is to go round the long way from Edinburgh to Glasgow, and it's that sort of thing that we want to stop the ludicrous
Yeah. Do
use.
you okay? Do you? I feel like we've reached conclusion here. Is there
I
some?
think we've converged. The thing that's added. So previously I was actually using JSON, and it's like, no, let's use NL. I think we've I think we agree that you use NL to the last responsible moment, and then you compile
Yeah,
it into something that is
yeah, and I think
semi-static.
when you're about to write to disk, right before you
Yeah,
write to disk, making it be a structured format that gets checked is perfectly legitimate.
right. And then you can still talk to the compiled JSON with NL, and it should just get it because, hey, it's well structured and well understood. And if you want to make a change, then you go back up to the definitions thing in order to make sure that your change hasn't actually made any contradictions or stupidness happen. And it's not a compile step, and then you can rerun modeling on, you know, the newly compiled thing and saying, "Have I broken?" It's like, well, now a route to pick up from here to here used to take 3 minutes. Now it takes 43 years. It's like, that's weird. And so there's a number of checks that you can do in modeling, even though it is the definitions are self-coherent, and those definitions produced through compilation a set of JSON. You can then populate that JSON with your current set of data, and then run some checks to make sure you haven't. Ah, right. So what we're talking about really there is, I think you picked me up about conflating coherence and correctness and completeness. So coherence is at the definition level. Correctness is at the JSON level. Well, I've defined those, by the way, because you asked me to define them.
Yeah,
Um,
that's not at all what's.
well, that is an implication that maybe that you haven't stated, but that is a following implication, which I agree with.
Yep, it is.
Um,
The JSON does enforce another layer of correctness.
yeah.
All right, what now? Are we done on
Um,
this topic?
yeah. The only thing is how to capture this process other than in this
I
transcript.
don't think you really need to do that because what I'm coming up, I'm starting here and coming up, and we're not ready to meet yet, but we will. And when
Yeah.
we
Okay.
do, then that's the time to solve that. It's
So where the interface we meet in is where we go from a domain and render it into JSON. So I'm
no,
coming
you
at
go
from
from a domain and you render it into JSON schema,
into
and
JSON schema. Yes.
and
Sorry.
then you
Yep.
start
Yep.
using the JSON schema to render into JSON, where the JSON schema gives you an additional level of correctness checking.
Yes. So the handoff part is though me handing off a JSON schema to you, and from that point,
Yeah, so the jack points in the implementation of Artifact is like a nap that can be given a JSON schema and can write a record that matches that schema.
right, and they can do all that kind of storing and
Yeah, yeah, and then it's
reasoning
off
and
to
that sort of
like
thing.
machine world or conventional code world, and the
Yeah.
LLM. is only responsible for writing the JSON correctly, and that's it.
At which point the LLM is actually just a very convenient HCI, um, because it's got the JSON schema and the expression of that with actual data. It could be NL, it could be, it could be queries,
Yep.
it could be anything you want. Okay.
Just to make sure you understand completely how that all hangs together. Stop me at any time when you've seen.
No, I was about to ask this. What? Give me an exemplar of what a schema is versus just JSON with empty fields, for example, or definitions for fields.
So this is an example of how you can automatically generate a UI form based on JSON schema. And so this, there's some good examples.
Yeah, I got you. All right, so it's got now we're kind of into programming language where we're talking about a first name is type string. So that's
yeah. But from the reasoning, you need to render the schema, and from that point on, you are guaranteed that everything that gets written as a JSON object, so this would be the JSON object. Everything that gets written as a JSON object will definitely comply with that schema, because in Artifact I will make it so, and it will not permit you to do it any other way.
Yep, happy with that.
Yeah, and so some of that lends its hand to being able to do more fancy stuff with code, like doing a search. Like a conventional search is actually useful in some cases. Like if I'm like, give me everyone whose name starts with C, that's sort of wasteful to do LLM calls. Not that the waste is the matter. My point is that the LLM even could write a very simple query to do that search and then run it.
Exactly. You could create an app that knows about the schema and then takes natural language into... What's the form of searching a schema or searching the instantiation of the schema with data in it?
The instantiation of a JSON schema, the typical standard way is with a language called Mango.
Okay. All right. So that's a well-known thing. I don't not heard of Mango, but that's a well-kent path then.
Yeah, it's pretty good actually. It's
you haven't caught it as well. I've just given you the virus.
Mango query language.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, okay.
The Mango query language. So you basically say things.
Okay. Right, and now we're in artifact land, which is going to be much faster, no tokens.
Yeah, but it's not about having no tokens or being faster. It's just about that sometimes this is all you need, and the LLMs know how to write these queries. Like if I'm like, hey, write a Mango language query to search this schema for blah blah blah, it would do even that on the fly, So, but I guess the real point is that the CRM guys wanted to be able to have a widget that would give them live, as they type, real-time search, where they narrowed down the results. Now, technical limitations prohibit us from using an LLM to do that in this day and age. Perhaps in a few years' time that's possible, but it's not possible today. To use conventional tools like a Mango query, that's trivial. And so that's why I was like, if we have it in JSON, it allows a significant portion of client requests of ours to be fulfilled using conventional code, even though that conventional code can be generated by the LLM. So it doesn't really cost us anything. It just gives them a functionality.
I totally agree with that. Actually, I think must have been back just about 15 or something like that, where the NL was generating the schema directly and including populating it, which is not right. It's not what you're saying here, but it's very similar and it works. It works really well. Can I ask for a 2-minute respite?
Sure, buddy. You can
I
take as
need to
much as you
wrap
like.
up. I need to get my coats on.
Okay. I'll wait
All
for you here.
I'll be right back.
Christ almighty. No wonder it's free.
All right.
Okay, buddy.
Back in the room. So yeah, the TLDR is. I agree. This is going to work.
Okay, sweet.
I think it's quite a good way of doing it.
Okay, great.
So what's next?
Next is blockchain SEO.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, AI SEO. My bad. AI SEO.
Yeah. So we are part of the Basilisk's knowledge. We're in its eye.
Turns out, buddy, that it
Which is
knows
great
about
because
Interbit.
and it will have all the press releases. It will have our
Yeah,
names
yeah,
splattered all over it.
right. And so I think my point that I'm trying to get at is that having a history or having a lineage, and so an example would be that, like, I got a buddy of mine who had a project back in 2017 for scrutinizing ICOs, but like you could launch that again now if you had the history and the LLM had indexed all the reasoning and the logic and all that about how that was going to work. It kind of feels like you'll rank higher if you come with some history, because it's like, oh yeah, I know about that thing, I know about that guy.
That's interesting. Did you check out whether or how much? Oh, sorry. Whether the index is complete or is compiled down.
Well, I mean, it's
So,
spat out. I don't know, but I mean, where else would it know about Interbit?
well, for example, what model are you using here?
O
ChatGPT.
one. I only use O1.
O1 doesn't have access to the live website, so that's fine.
No, but
So
that's
all
good
it
though.
knows
That's what you
is,
want.
yeah.
This is in the index, right? And it
Right.
came out looking pretty good. It's like it read about Interbit. It knows about it.
Yeah. That is good. I mean, that's a source of it's not quite, it's not immutable, is it? But it's a sort of trusted authority that you're inside of a model. Um, and
You got indexed, you got scraped,
you-
and it's
yeah,
so. But it's sort of you also you've been reasoned about, like
yes, exactly. Yeah.
you know.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. It's not just if you to go on Google, it's like sure you can see all the press releases.
Yeah,
You
and
can go into
so
the Wayback Machine and see look
yeah,
at the
and so
website.
you can do things like you can ask for it. Compare this with Ethereum.
Oh, this would be interesting. Yeah,
Huh. Well,
didn't like
that's
that.
anyway. My point is that in the bots that we make, if we tell it to sort of reference certain things, we can. You know how Darren Brown does like NLP with people and like
Yeah,
speaks a little funny to make them respond a little differently.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
but
just NLP. Yeah.
yeah, but the same thing applies to AI, and I think in a more specific sense, if you tell it what things are like, so this is like Interbit but different in this way and
Well,
that
here's
way.
can I try one? Can you ask at the time Intibit was operating, was anyone else working on a multi-blockchain platform?
Um, Hang on.
I'm just curious. I might play with this later on because it's a bit like vanity googling, isn't it?
Uh, if I can, I leave you to do that in your own
Yeah,
time.
sure.
Yeah, I'm sure you, with your pending illness, will have
Yeah.
much free time. Okay, so
Just tell
anyway,
us.
I get what I'm saying is that if we were to undertake any given venture, coming in with history that's been indexed by the LLM is advantageous. And in particular, the story that we might tell with a particular public company, if we turned up, it would have LLM lineage as well as real world lineage
Right,
as
because
well.
if it's indexed and well, it's not even indexed. It's ingested into
It's been
the
inferred.
learning model, and
Yeah,
inference has been made,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then we can't bullshit about it. It's like
yeah.
we
But
can't say
also, what's
it's
happening is that people will immediately fire up ChatGPT or whatever favorite AI agent they've got and
uh,
ask about our project. And if part of our messaging on the website or however else because they're gonna need to supply reference material somehow, right? Like if you turn up to
right.
ChatGPT and you're like, "Tell me about the Dreamcatcher," and it'll be like, "What the hell is that?" And you're gonna give it a website. And the point I'm trying to drive home with SEO is that if we have on the website words that say came from Interbit, the spiritual successor to Interbit, blah blah blah,
Uh-huh.
you can
Uh-huh.
then cause the reasoning steps of O1 to pull in what it knows about Interbit, so that it
Uh-huh.
comes up with more legitimate sounding responses because it's connected to more neurons have been
Yeah.
brought to
Well,
bear.
there is probably a restriction here, though, and quite rightly, I'm sure when they were scraping, they didn't just scrape. They're filtered, so I doubt if you can get personally identifiable information. If you put my name into O1 right now, it's not going to come up with anything. Probably.
Yeah, well, it might be in the inference, but it might we don't know at what stage in the generation pipeline it gets cut. It might be a filter right at the end, or it might have been killed in the training data. Who knows?
Right, but it's the thing is, it will know that there was a CTO and a CEO of Intibit, and they did this, and might not name them. They probably got filters for PID
Oh,
in
right.
there,
So
Butler
maybe you could
filters.
actually give yourself more kudos in the AI's eyes by saying more about what you were. Like if you relate it back to the company history, it just feels like you get a more deeper response or more enthusiastic response, because that's really what it's all about now. Is that people are going to ask ChatGPT about any new venture that turns up, and if
Right,
you've angled it right, you can
right.
perform better when the LLM talks about you if you constructed your materials and evaled your materials to be
Well,
maximal.
you want to generate your evals. You want to generate your material, your content, from the O1 current um, burn that they've got.
Yeah, you want to generate it based on the
So that
natural
if anyone
fall or
double,
the flop,
yeah,
the LLM flop, like where if you didn't constrain it in any way, what would it say or do? You
yeah,
want to
because
boost
then
that.
There's resonance when we state, yeah, Interbit did this, and they go, oh really? I'm gonna fire up ChatGPT and gonna ask about Interbit.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh,
And then every like
yeah,
follow-on question has already got all that in context, and so it gives a much more warmer tone.
it's resonance is not the right word. But I guess credibility or
Yeah, like if you, it's
something
like
like
it's
that.
funny. Like
Yeah,
there's an interesting flaw here, right? Like the LLM trusts its training data, and so
yeah.
if you've managed to peg to the training data somehow, then you suddenly seem a lot more legitimate,
oh my god, I bet
right?
someone somewhere is thinking about how to get
False information into training models.
Well, yeah,
It's a kind of
that's
new
a, that's a,
SEO, isn't
that's
it?
the new SEO, but the issue is it takes a little bit of time, but you still can't outdo the weight of things that occurred before the great ingesting. Like
Right, because
if it
there's
you didn't know about AI when all that stuff happened, and so that's sort of the last time anyone was honest.
but yeah,
but also it's inferring. The model is inferring, and it infers from multiple sources. So if there's one page that says, "Hey, this did Scott was a fantastic painter like Picasso and became world famous," and that's on one page, it's going to disregard that
Mm.
because there's
Yeah,
no
it's because
evidence.
it's got to be doing something like the Google PageRank algorithm, where it assesses how good the information is by how deeply it's embedded here, there, and everywhere, right? And one
Right.
of the key embeddings is the patents that were filed about Interbit. And
True.
so
Yeah.
what I was thinking of doing is during the implementation reasoning in that domain, maybe ingesting the patents and saying of this implementation given here, um, what elements overlap with these patents, and
well,
That's an interesting point because patents are going to be given quite a lot of weight
a lot of weight.
uh,
They're kind of
because
considered
there's
reference.
yeah because it takes effort and cash to burn.
Yeah.
Uh, I wonder if we should be patenting some of the this reasoning that we've done
No, dude.
here.
No, 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 no. Patents are
No, why
over.
not?
Patents are over,
Do you think? Because you remember?
dude. I don't even want to. If you want to patent it, you can go right ahead. But I promise you,
Okay.
you will lose so much time that by the time you come back, like
Okay,
we'll be somewhere else.
it was just a passing thought because
Let it die. Let it
open
die.
source backed with a patent is actually quite powerful. But yeah, we probably don't have time and it's probably not worth it. Just a thought passing. But yeah, that's interesting.
Okay.
I agree with your.
Next topic,
Huh.
if I may.
Go ahead.
B money. So I asked O1 what blockchains came before Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, well, basically nothing. But there was this
I
theoretical
remember.
one.
I remember B money.
Yeah, but it was theoretical.
Mm.
And the point is that if we did the reasoning for the Dreamcatcher,
Mm-hmm.
that's equivalent to B money because it's been developed theoretically, and it's saying that, if you had this and if you had that, and it's saying that you can construct this thing if only
Mm-hmm.
these other things existed, right? And that's why it's sort of giving me quite an urgent feel about getting the Dreamcatcher reasoning completed, because it forms that kind of basis. It's kind
Uh-huh.
of like if we died tomorrow and the reasoning was done,
Who
people
would know
could
about it?
work with that. It's value that they could use to
Yeah.
continue on. But until we have that, nobody's gonna. The information is too diffuse. It's not concentrated anywhere. Getting the
I wonder.
reasoning down is a concentrating step that's like it's refined to like 99.99% pure, and now it's valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But the thing is, I love it that we uh, post everything on YouTube. And hey, we've got 20 followers. I'm waiting to be monetized any moment. But
One of our videos got like 300 something views.
did it?
Yeah.
Wow, my God, that's 300 odd people who really need to get get a life.
Dude, don't
These,
be rude. You don't
these
know,
calls are
yeah, but
hard.
you don't know, you don't know how people are processing this information. They might just be hauling in the transcripts and then indexing it. You know, like
True.
we are actually very far behind the ball because we should have spiders out there watching the technical landscape. We have the components to make spiders, but we don't. So we're still anaerobic, I guess. Like it's dangerous where we
Um,
are. And you don't know what people are doing with the information that we're producing, and you don't know what value it is of them. Just
no,
because they
that's
don't communicate with you doesn't allow
yeah,
you to make assumptions about who they are or what they're doing.
yeah. I agree. I'd be very curious to see what.
Okay,
Um,
so with B money, if we get the reasoning to be that same sort of concept, where it's like a theoretical, pure logic of what
mhm.
it should be, then it feels to me like if we can turn that into a bot or an agent, then like making an agent feels like the new form of book writing because you're like, here's this agent, we evaled it, we constructed it, we believe it to be correct, and then the agent can give you more than what a book can because you can ask a bunch of questions.
Yeah, and you could even just say, just tell me about it, or construct it in a narrative,
Right, but you can
and away it
also ask it
goes.
questions that it'll figure out for you, like, hey, how would I do this, this, and this? And what about this problem? And
That's a really
then
interesting
you
idea.
can ask
Yeah,
it to compare with things that you know about. Because if you don't know about the Dreamcatcher, but you know about some area of economics, you're like, how does this compare to the blah, blah, blah theory of economics? And it'll tell you, right? So
so,
producing a
yeah.
bot is actually is
That's
better than a
not.
white paper.
It's not. It is better in white paper for humans, but it's never going to be ingested into the next version of O1.
Yes, it will be. I believe you have made a fallacy of thinking there because if there's a new way, I think, to publish a website, and it's
Hmm.
in an LLM friendly way, and so this these reasoning domains are very LLM friendly, and if we just simply put them up on a website,
Oh, so if I see what you're
they will get
saying.
indexed deeper than a typical
Okay, so
website.
because it's logic friendly and the
It's in the alien's
LM is going to
language.
go. It's going. Ah, yeah,
It's in the
yeah.
aliens. It's closer to the aliens' native
So
language. That's
so
why it'll be deeper.
we should be we should be getting well we already have.
We should be getting
Um,
indexed, is what we should be
w-
doing as soon as we
we,
can.
no, what I was saying is at the moment we got it on GitHub, but definitions for Dreamcatcher, definitions for decentralized AI. Um, we should just publish it. At the moment, it's on GitHub. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
saved
we
on
should.
GitHub.
Yeah, we should SEO it because if we can get it to get those pages to show up in popular search terms, then we sort of get boosted a bit more in
Well,
the
we should.
LLM.
An easy way of doing that would just be to stick some pages up on the website which simply mirror uh,
Yeah.
the definitions.
Yep.
Oh, one
Yep.
second. Incoming. Who's that from? All right. Okay. That's
No.
Jude. I need to go and give her a call because she's feeling like shit.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want to call
but
it
yeah,
there?
uh, um, as well. I could probably squeeze another 5 minutes out if there's anything else.
Yeah, so just to close off that point of producing a book instead of a white paper, if you how do I put this? If you make a white paper, it takes a lot of effort, but it sort of might be wrong. If you make a bot,
You can make as many white papers as you want, depending on which angle you want to
yeah,
generate.
yeah, and it's a much more lively way, I guess, to present your white papered information. It comes with the site. Yeah, that's all there is on that, actually.
I like this idea. I'll play with it. But at the very least, well,
So you can also,
presumably,
like, a book being published like that is easier for you to iterate on as well as another human. But
yeah,
there's something about the fact that that format is also very easily Wikipediaized. Like, a white paper is hard
yeah,
to Wikipediaize, whereas the domain reasoning is very, very Wikipediaizable because it's these little atoms or axioms, and so it can
right.
sort of be co-developed gradually by a lot of different people.
And also, handwritten Wikipedia has all these reference required or snarky notes from
Yeah,
different editors and that sort of thing. You
yeah,
can't do that if you've got, say, you've got a domain, uh, because everyone is talking about the same thing.
yeah. And the bot prohibits the edits from being off topic or weird or something
Yeah,
like that, right?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. I like this a lot. I'm going to need to go.
Okay, buddy.
Now, today, I'm probably going to just go and find a rock and crawl under it for a
Okay.
while. I'll try and get some stuff done anyway, but I can't promise. I will let you know this evening, as in, roughly 10 hours, about whether I'm going to be able to do the same thing tomorrow.
Okay, no
probably
worries.
can, but in the same kind of half-arsed, slightly sniffy way
No
where,
worries, buddy.
I'm not exactly my best, and
No worries. Okay, I'll stop the
losing
recording.